right, good afternoon and happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the next installment of PNACAC's Happy Hour webinar series, Transfer Credit Reviews, Empowering Transfer Students Through Transparency. Yes, we know it may be a bit early for some of you to have a true happy hour here on the West Coast, but this is still an hour that will hopefully make you happy to have learned something new. My name is Erin Jensen. I'm the Technology Committee Chair for PNACAC. And I'm joined behind the scenes by Sarah Seaborg, our Professional Development Committee Co-Chair, and Max Hamburger, our Communications Committee Chair. And for all PNACAC members in attendance, we'd like to remind you right off the bat that we have a virtual special meeting of the association on Thursday, May 21st. It's very important that we have you there, and we'll be sharing more details about that at the end of the webinar, and you can find that on our website as well. So next, a bit of housekeeping. We will keep the chat feature closed today, so you can check that for more information about how to find this webinar on our YouTube channel. But we do welcome you to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to ask questions anytime during the presentation. We'll do our best to address your questions live at the conclusion of the webinar, and instead of typing them to you, so we'll hopefully just answer them live. And if we cannot get to all of them, we'll follow up with you directly afterwards. And additionally, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel by Monday morning. All attendees will receive a notification by email once it's been posted online. So now, without further ado, I am pleased to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. Cody Singer is the Enrollment Development Coordinator at Eastern Oregon University. Cody has revolutionized the way Eastern serves its prospective transfer students. Today, he'll be sharing a bit more about how his innovative work with transfer students can provide transparency in the admission process. Cody, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, hello everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining me on a late Friday afternoon. I know at least here in Eastern Oregon, the weather is beautiful, but I'm excited to be able to spend a little bit of the next hour or so with you this afternoon. So thank you for the introduction. I do have to clarify, it wasn't just me who implemented the transfer credit review. We did it I worked with a really talented team across our university. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to present that to you all and hopefully find some value in it. So quick introduction. Again, my name's Cody Singer. I'm the Enrollment Development Coordinator at Eastern Oregon University. My background, I've been in higher ed professionally for about 10 years now. Originally, I started in residence life and student housing, working more on the student experience and retention side of higher education. Now on the enrollment side of the house, working with online and on-campus enrollment and recruitment. And I primarily work with transfer students more often than not, but also get the opportunity to work with our wonderful admissions team at EOU and work with all student types. So today's presentation, as was indicated, we're going to talk a little bit about a little over a year ago, we launched a transfer credit review process here at Eastern Oregon University, implemented it and as a kind of a recruitment tool, which played a large role in increasing our student transfer population, specifically our online population. A lot of online students took advantage of that. And our headcount increased year over year by 7%. So we'll get into a little bit of the data a little bit later, but essentially, or most importantly, I should say, my goal today is to give you something you can take away from this presentation and really implement at your own institutions. I'm hoping to avoid being another webinar where there are no action steps. So for schools that already offer something similar, a pre-application transfer credit review, hopefully those institutions can find more effective ways and learn a little bit from what we went through. For schools who haven't or are interested in implementing a similar process, this presentation is for you. So you'll hopefully be able to get some value and steps to implement that at your institution. So overall, this presentation, I would be remiss to say if I'm not going to have all the answers by any means, but it should get you at least started improving at your institutions and implementing this process. of pre-evaluation of transcripts. And I'll provide my information at the end if there's anyone that wants to go into more of the details. It'll be kind of a 30,000-foot view of, hey, this is how it happened at UU. These are the challenges we went through. Here's our solutions, and hopefully you can take some value away from that. So quick background, like I said, about a year and a half ago, we implemented this pre-application unofficial transfer credit review as a recruitment tool. I said this earlier, but I was fortunate enough to work with a really great team across our university to implement this. And this presentation is organized in a way that hopefully sprinkles a little bit of practical knowledge, being kind of on the ground and solving problems, implementing this, as well as some solutions so you all can avoid some of the same challenges we faced, learn from experience kind of thing. And be able to implement that at your institution. So first off, what is a transfer credit review for folks that aren't familiar? Essentially, I might refer to it as a TCR just because it's less syllables, easier to say. But a transfer credit review it's pre-application. So I've said this 3 times now, it's a recruitment tool. And the idea is to really make a transparent, clear process for students to have an idea of where they come into an institution. Transferring, whether they're a non-traditional student who just never finished college and they're transferring in credits from 20 years ago or whatever it is, or they're just fresh out of community college, transferring to your school. Yeah, all of those different student types. So I think we'll jump into the why piece. I think that's pretty clear. Every institution calls it something a little bit different. We call it a transfer credit review. But I think the why piece is really important. First off, what counts? That answers the student question as to what classes that they've already taken that applies towards their bachelor's degree programs, their master's degree programs, whatever it is. And data, as we all know in admissions, indicates that students are becoming more and more cautious of how their transfer credits apply to a new college or a new university. So knowing that students prioritize this knowledge, a transfer credit review allows for a transparent transfer process and student experience. So tells them that their work that they completed applies and is worthwhile, which is significant value proposition there. In addition, schools have the opportunity to articulate how the joint services transcripts, military and veterans that are coming into your school, how those things apply. A lot of that piece of the transfer population struggles a little bit sometimes because not everybody's made it really clear how a training in the military setting can apply to potentially, depending on the organization, to credits at a school. That and life experience, many schools, not all of course, but many schools have options for folks who have significant life experience to receive some college credits. This is an opportunity for your institution to articulate that and say, hey, if you've been in management for 30 years, you're coming back to finish your degree or whatever it is, you might be able to get some management credits. Again, not all schools have that, but for schools who do, this is a great opportunity to articulate that as an advantage when recruiting transfer students. In addition to that, what do the students care about? Well, how long is it going to take to complete my degree? So time to completion is really accurate when we can confidently say that, hey, you've completed 75% of your degree. Here are the 25%, the classes that you need to take. And ask the question, how many credits are you planning on taking a term? They give you kind of an answer and you can break it down time to completion. That's a huge value proposition to be able to say, well, you're 75% complete. You're going to be able to complete your degree at full time in 1 year, just like that. So this transfer credit review process allows you to answer that question really, really accurately, as opposed to kind of a general 4-year degree takes 4 years, so get it done. How much money? We all know this in admissions. What's it going to cost me? Transfer credit review, again, shows exactly what classes you have left. You can do some quick math with a student right there and say, you've got 25% left. So depending on how many credits that is, times that by your credits and any cost of attendance information your institution has, and you can provide a not perfect, but more accurate approximation of how much that degree completion is going to cost that student and help them start planning for their financial future. through this process, which is really significant. And then finally, and I would argue most importantly from the admissions recruitment enrollment perspective, is the relationship building that you do with a student who's going through this process. It creates a relationship between the school and the potential student, because a student is more inclined to select a school, right, that provides a clear pathway to degree completion and has really spent time to walk the student through the enrollment process. So the more clear you can make this pathway through a transfer credit review for a student, the more they've invested into your recruitment process and your communication plans, the more likely they're going to be able to see themselves at EOU. When it's transparent, or excuse me, not at EOU, at your institution, for us EOU, but when it's transparent and they know exactly where they're going to come in, at least unofficially, then it makes it much easier for a student to make that decision. So just as the data piece I mentioned in the introduction, we kind of already answered the why. Why would this be worthwhile? This is just to kind of support that, to show you at EOU a little over a year and a half ago what happened, how it impacted our recruitment process, the results, so to speak. So before we really get into the implementation details, I wanted to share this evidence, I guess, that how it influenced our student matriculation. So the graph on the left, that's our full-time enrollment and our head count. You can see year over year, the year we implemented this, we increased student head count in this specific population by 7%, and our full-time enrollment increased by 4.6%. I think it's important to mention with this data that it likely was not due to just the transfer credit review, right? A lot of things go on in the recruitment world at every institution, but I'm confident that the implementation of this transfer credit review at our institution impacted those increases. And the reason I'm confident is you can look at the next one, the funnel yields. This is a graph on the right that illustrates the ratio increases at each stage in the recruitment funnel and compared to the year prior. So students who came into our transfer credit review funnel as an inquiry were 13% more likely than students who didn't to matriculate or to go on to the next stage, so our application to apply to EOU. Once we had students who went through this process and had an application in, they were 10% more likely to finish all of the steps in order to be admitted to EOU. So submitting official transcripts and going through that process of becoming admitted to a university. And then finally, our folks who were admitted to EOU, they were 14% more likely to start taking classes and matriculate to Eastern Oregon University. So I think that data on the right, the funnel yields, reflects the data on the left. I think it's a more important piece because it illustrates the ratio increases at each stage of the recruitment funnel compared to the year prior, and increases in yields lead to increases in headcount. So you know this, you can start with the exact same bucket of students, the number of students in your recruitment funnel, but if you recruit them at a higher yields, you receive more students and increase your transfer student population. So this piece, we set up kind of an interactive piece to the presentation using Zoom polls. So if you've totally stopped paying attention at this point already, I'm gonna encourage you to check back in. We're gonna send here shortly a question. We have 4 questions, so pretty quick, pretty easy. To your computer, you'll be able to select a response. We'll review the responses as soon as give you some time to read the question, review the responses, and then talk a little bit about that. The first 3 questions are kind of warm-ups. The 4th question is a quiz. So yeah, if you were totally tuned out, join us back and let's see if we can get this set up. Okay, so just launched the poll. You should receive it on your computer right now. It says, how important does your college or university consider transfer students in your recruitment strategy? So this is totally from your perspective. regardless of what your supervisor says. From your perspective, how important does your university consider transfer students? I'll give just a couple seconds for folks to respond to that. Great. So I'll share those results. You should be able to see on your screen how folks responded. Looks like about half, roughly, a little bit less than half said very important, very exciting, that's good. That's probably why you're here. Somewhat important, exactly half of the respondents said that, also probably why you're here. And then not important at all, one person, and also probably why you're here. So good, that's great. All right, I'm gonna do another question here. This one's a little bit more for fun. What is the average age of a community college student? Again, this is the warm-up. Give a couple seconds for folks to respond to that. Perfect. All right, I'll share those results. So most of you picked 26. Great guess. Then it looks like tied for second place was either 24 or 29. Believe it or not, the average age of a community college student is 29 years old nationally in the United States. So those of you, the quarter of you that got that right, congratulations. But yeah, according to both NACAC data and the Department of Education, the average age of a community college student is 29 years old. All right, I got one more warm-up question we'll jump into really quick. This one's kind of a fun one too. All right, should see it on your computer. It says, how many Americans in the United States have some college credit but no degree? I'll give a few seconds for that too. Looks like there's a couple more coming in. Perfect. Share those results. So you should be able to see on your screen the results of how you all answered. 27 million was the most popular. I'm glad 7 people said too many. I agree. That's why we're all here. And then 36 million, then 1.2 million. So according to the Department of Education, 36 million Americans in the United States have college credit and do not have a college degree. 36 million Americans. So the 6 of you that answered that question right, good work, nice job. Yeah, that is also too many. I'll count that as a correct answer as well. But yeah, 36 million Americans. Okay, so those are our 3 warm-up questions. We're gonna jump right into the quiz time. This is our last question. If everybody can respond, that'd be great. And you should see it on your computer now. It says, what is the most important deciding factor for a transfer student to select a community or to select a college or a university to transfer to? Give it just a few more seconds. Great. Share those results. So 15% said affordability and 85% said ability to transfer credits. That seems kind of like a leading question, right? That's the topic of this presentation. So that would make sense. Career preparation, I'm surprised nobody selected career preparation. I would argue that most students go to college in order to be prepared for their careers. And then cool parties. Yeah, that, I don't know. Depends on the student, I guess. Well, that's interesting. So it was kind of a leading question. Excuse me. You can actually see that all three of those answers, with the exception of cool parties, are responses, the top three responses to why a student at a community college or looking to transfer to a four-year institution or higher select a school. So cost is always king. It has been for a very long time. My guess is it'll continue to be. Affordability is a really important piece. That's not why we or this presentation exists. We're not going to talk about costs. That's a whole nother topic. But the second most common response to that question when polled across the nation is the ability to transfer credits. So you can see that, well, again, why this process exists, why it's important, because students, they want to know. They want to know that the work that they did counts towards their future, and they don't have to redo that work in any way. So I think that plays into cost too. The more that transfers and applies, the less they have to complete, right, and pay for credit-wise. And then career preparation is the third one. I believe that also applies to both ability to transfer credits and affordability, knowing that the more credits that transfer to an institution, and they can be confident in that, that's the less they have to complete, and it shortens their time to degree completion, which ultimately increases their earning potential over their career, right? So they can get into the workforce sooner, earn more money over their lifetimes. So I think they're all very related. I will ask one additional question. I think it's a little bit more rhetorical, but something I think is important for you all to process given our current global environment. I wonder, and I know many admissions people are having conversations probably more frequently than on a daily basis, on what impact will the COVID-19 pandemic have on student responses to this exact question. Will this change? Will this be maximized? Will more students pick those top three responses? Will something else come in and say, no, this is the most important piece? As a result, we know our higher education environment is changing very rapidly. So I'm curious on how that'll impact. My guess, and this is total speculation based off my experience, is that those top three are going to, excuse me, will become even more prevalent. Cost is going to be really, really important. Ability to transfer credits is related. And then a lot of people don't have jobs right now. So career preparation is going to be incredibly important. So curious to hear what other institutions are thinking, but that's my guess. So how we do it? So we've answered the why it's important. This is kind of the meat of the presentation. We know why it's important. We know the results. We know how it impacted Eastern Oregon University specifically and how it may impact your institution. We know students find it important. If we're not articulating how we transfer credits, we're doing our institution a disservice because we know it's the second most important next to cost choice indicator. The how piece, I've broken it up into two parts. The first part is really from the external experience. So the student's experience, how they experience a transfer credit review from Eastern Oregon University's perspective. And then the second part is the staff experience. So the internal piece, how does it work? How do we implement it at our institution and at other institutions? And what questions to answer as you're starting to implement that at your institution. So dive into, let's go back. The external piece first. You can all see, I've navigated to our transfer landing page at Eastern Oregon University. I'm using EOU as an example because it's the institution I work for and I'm most familiar with. What you're gonna see as you're looking through our transfer landing page, this is where most transfer students come visit EOU. This is where they land. multiple times throughout our page, we've got the very same call to action, very consistent. So other than applying to EOU as the next step, we have a transfer credit review right here. Talks a little bit about what that looks like. We have transfer credit review right here. We have our transfer pathways as well as our transfer equivalency tool. All of these essentially lead to the exact same thing, what transfers to EOU. So our call to action is really, really consistent and it's everywhere. So we'll do the transfer credit review link first. This page that I just took you to essentially is our landing page for any student interested in seeing what they've completed and how it applies to our institution to see if EOU is going to be a good fit for their next step. So a lot of our marketing materials and our marketing campaigns route students to this location because we know that a student who completes a transfer credit review is going to matriculate at a much higher rate than someone who doesn't. So we've ingrained it as such an important step to the recruitment process because we know it works. So students land here in a variety of different ways, whether they just went through the way we did or via social media or whatever it looks like. And then this kind of breaks down a little bit of the information about the review itself, their expectations, what they can expect. In 72 hours, you'll receive the transfer credit review, so on and so forth. So hypothetically, a student decides to click this. Again, this is from their perspective, their experience. They're brought to this form. And essentially, this form is just our request for information form. It's exactly the same as most other institutions have, colleges and universities when they're looking to identify inquiries and folks who are interested so they can reach out to a counselor or whatever it is. Exact same form that we use for all of our other inquiries. The only addition to it is that you can also upload transcripts. And then that builds into our CRM, into a workflow, which we'll kind of get into here in a minute. But again, from the student's perspective, they'll enter their information, they'll upload the files, as many as they want, with all their transcripts, and then they click submit. So as soon as a student submits one of those, they're assigned to and contacted by an admissions counselor, and the counselor notifies them, hey, we've received your transfer credit review, we're going to work on it. Should receive that in the next 72 hours or less, and we'll walk you through the whole process as to what it means, and because transferring to an institution is not always easy. So from there, I'll take you to an example. This is an actual transfer credit review. Well, it's an example transfer credit review, but what it looks like for a hypothetical student I made up and put in some classes. Our marketing team did an amazing job of making it pretty and putting our mascot and some marketing recognizable pieces on it. But this is what's sent to the student. And then the counselor follows up with a phone call appointment to review it and to walk through it step by step. So on this call, when we call them and review this information, we're not only educating them about EOU and our degree requirements, but this call is really, really important, I should say, because it continues to build the relationship with the student so that they have a transparent process. They know exactly how they fit as a puzzle piece into EOU. So let's review this, what it looks like. Has their name, has some information, has my contact information and my phone number. It's kind of an introductory page. Right here, it breaks down really, we organize EOUs and graduation requirements in 3 separate sections. Many of you do too. There's the general education section, and their percent towards completed there. Their major program requirements and percent completed there, as well as any other institutional or graduation requirements and the total approximate percentage towards completion. And of course, call to action being an application. So here's the details for an example. This is our general education page. It breaks down hypothetically this student, and we're walking the student through this process. We say, hey, we've got these 4 general education categories. You have to have a certain number of credits, so on and so forth. You all are very familiar with this. We plug this in and automatically computes this percentage, which is pretty nice. Thank you, IT folks, for setting up this form. And gives the student okay, cool. So I can see this student, based off of our requirements at EOU, needs 1 more AEH category and 2 more APC categories, and at least 1 total credit to finish their gen eds. Section explaining that in case we can't contact the student and walk them through this, but it explains that as well. The major program requirements, very similar, except for based off of a check sheet, right? For the actual requirements for the major, if they're studying computer science or business or whatever it is. This one is fire services administration, and how these fire tech classes, for example, applied to their degree. So here you can see 30 credits out of their 75 required fire credits applied to their degree, and they're 40% complete with that piece. And finally, we have the institutional graduation requirements, and that is just everything else, essentially. So your writing requirements, your math requirements, whatever your institution requires you to complete, or a student to complete a bachelor's degree program, we plug those in as well. And that computes our total transfer credit applied. This student, you can see, had 125 credits out of 180 required credits at UU or on a quarter system, which means they're approximately 69% complete with their entire degree at UU. So we're very careful in this, since it is pre-application and we're not using official transcripts in all of our communication. This is unofficial, but we're highly trained and we've done a lot of these, and we're usually pretty accurate, which we'll get into the training piece here shortly. Same thing here, there's a section for notes, gives them approximate, hey, you could finish up your degree by maybe spring term, June 2021, with a Bachelor's of Science in Fire Service Administration, for example. And then there's a final page. This is more just an extra piece for students, definitions. Again, in case we can't speak with the student directly on the phone and build that relationship and explain how clear UU's process is, we put that information here so they can essentially teach themselves in case we can't contact them. So there's lots of options, our credit for life experience, start your application, so on and so forth. Great. So that's from the student's perspective. That's what they see. Then this next piece is a little bit more what you may be interested in. How do we do it at my institution? How do we make this happen? How do we implement it? And what steps do we need to take to do that? So from the staff experience, or the internal piece, we have, and I mentioned it earlier, we have built this out into our CRM. And I know most institutions have some sort of customer resource management software that helps them keep track of inquiries and application data and those types of things. We worked with our IT department, of course, to build this out into our CRM, so we have a workflow that we'll kind of walk through. It's, for the purpose of this presentation, it's probably way too detailed. I won't spend any time how we did that. We can talk about that later if that's something you're interested in when I share my contact information. But I'm going to give, again, 30,000-foot view of how it works, essentially. But it's an important piece to keep in mind. One, building out the workflow in a CRM helps maintain consistency in student experience. But I think even more important than that is it helps measure results. So when you're building that out, if you build it out in your CRM, making sure that the right folks are involved to monitor these types of things. So timeliness of completion and matriculation rates and all the things you need in order to make data-driven decisions is a really important piece of the CRM build-out. So process-wise, internally, our admissions counselors receive a new inquiry or whatever it is, a new contact that requested a transfer credit review, and their contact is assigned to them, and the counselor then reaches out, right? Says, hey, we've received your transfer credit review, give us 72 hours and we'll get that back to you and share this information, and then we'll connect and schedule an appointment for a follow-up. Often our counselors will schedule that appointment right then, get that thing done, send it out, and that way we can definitely have that follow-up conversation. I think that's an important piece to decide, is every school does this slightly different and has a different process for how credits are articulated in your systems. Some advisors do it at some institutions I've spoken to. Sometimes the registrar's office does it. For the unofficial review at EOU, the pre-application piece, we use admissions counselors to complete that, which requires the training piece, and which we'll talk a little bit about later. It's worthwhile to evaluate your organizational structure to decide and see what's the best fit. Where does this naturally fit within our organization? Who should complete these? Training folks, we use tests. Many of you have probably heard of that, the transfer equivalency tool by College Source. I know it's widely used across our nation at colleges and universities, and helps us look up different classes and decide whether they're applicable to our programs and our degrees. But even more, I think importantly than that, we use that system primarily for classes we've never seen before on the unofficial side. And of course, our registrar's office uses that on the official side to help articulate equivalencies. But at EOU, we also have an external student-facing resource that students can access that shows how their classes, if we've ever articulated a class before, they can see how that class at their institution applies to EOU. So we encourage students to utilize that source. We primarily use that source because it helps us say, well, if a student's coming from our local community college, we've probably articulated all of their classes because we get a lot of students from there. We can go there and say, yes, small group communication equals small group communication at EOU, done, check, Gen Ed. So that's a really important resource. I know not all institutions do it that way, but it is pretty handy. Tests, of course, some schools completely use the transfer equivalency tool by College Source. So determining how whoever's completing it, whoever you decide should be completing these types of things, determining how they need to get that information is a really important piece. Once an admission counselor uses those tools to complete the transfer credit review, as I said, the review is completed, they reach out, they send it, they reach out and follow up with that meeting and then walk the student through that process. And again, I think it's worth reiterating that second meeting is so important because it does help educate the student on how we work and how they fit into our system, and give them a really clear path to degree completion, cost, all of the things that are important, career preparation, those types of things. It answers all of those questions and gives really accurate estimates on that. So that's kind of the 30,000-foot view of what it looks like at EOU. Again, I'm just touching on pieces because we don't have enough time to go into every single one of those. Excuse me. So in a brief overview of this, every institution's different. And I think that's a really important piece to reiterate. If you already have launched one of these or your version of this, or if this is something you're planning to implement at your institution in the near future, here are some questions I can encourage you to ask or consider and continue to consider as you go. First, who should be involved? This is in our experience was one of the most important questions we answered very, very early on. Who at your institution should be involved in this? So who typically articulates courses? Who works with prospective students? Who does the technical piece, the CRM piece, who evaluates success, does the data piece at your institution? Who does the website and is willing to put this into your web services? And the marketing team, should they be a part of this? Should you be using this as a tool to get in front of students? All of those are questions when you're implementing and or when you're continuing to work with a system like this. It is kind of a breathing, living process. It's constantly changing on our end too. Those are questions you should continue to ask to identify at your institution who should be a part of that and then build a really strong team out of that. Second, who should be trained? Who should be performing these? I know I already spent some time on this, but this is where you outline the process. So you build it out in the CRM, who's responding to it. Again, who typically completes course articulations. Can they train people like admissions counselors? So if your advisors do the course articulations, if your registrar does the course articulations, can they train admissions counselors or someone else to complete these things? That's what we did. Our registrar and her team helped us, trained up to complete these unofficial review process. And finally, who should be responsible? So we learned at EOU that the transfer credit review process is totally a living process. It's changing constantly. So it's really important that we have assigned who is responsible for following up on incomplete transfer credit reviews. There's changes in staff assignments, updating systems, websites, those types of things. Reporting out performance so you can continue to justify whether it's a worthwhile process at your institution. Assigning someone to oversee the process once you have implemented it really has, on our end, has alleviated many issues, and I'm sure it would on your end too. So these are just some of the questions I'd consider you to process as you're either, again, perfecting your process or launching it for the first time. And that's really it. I think we've answered the why, the data, the evidence, so to speak, a shorter overview of the how. Of course, I think it's important to say this is somewhat of a 30,000-foot view. It's just a little bit information, tip of the iceberg. It is a Friday afternoon. I'm sure many of you are excited to get into the weekend. However, this is a professional development community, PNACAC. So I'm excited to be able to present this to you, but I'm also even more excited. I've provided my information on the screen right now. There's my business card. If you want to connect later and explore a more detailed version of any piece that you're looking at, please take your phone out right now, take a photo of this transfer credit review, or excuse me, this my business card there. Shoot me an email, send me a message, connect with me on LinkedIn, whatever you need to do. I'm happy to connect with you. We're all in the same business together, so very excited to connect and help out. So thank you for spending your Friday afternoon with me, and I'll now transition back to our PNACAC host.
All right, thank you, Cody. We have 2 questions from the audience, and hopefully, we might have a few more coming in. The first one, though, goes back to the first slide that you had that showed some data of how your TCRs improved your enrollment. And the question is from Kelly. How many transfer students did you enroll in the fall 2018 term compared to what was seen in the fall 2019 term?
Thank you, Kelly, for asking a question. Yeah, so I primarily work in the online vertical, so I won't be able to speak specifically to our on-campus vertical, but I can say specific to online transfer students specifically, not first-time freshmen, we increased by 7%. So we are a pretty small institution in Northeast Oregon. In fact, we're the smallest of the 7 public schools in the state of Oregon. So our population in general is really small, but a 7% increase is a 7% increase. So we do, I think I acknowledged this earlier, but we do acknowledge that increase isn't purely based off of this transfer credit review, but we know that students who do complete the transfer credit review matriculate at a much higher rate. So it was the first time we ever launched it. We had more students come into our funnel, we had a very similar number of students come into our funnel at the front end, but some had completed the transfer credit review. Therefore, our head count at the very end and our student credit hours, our SCH, was higher there.
Great, thank you. And also from Kelly, how many TCRs or transfer credit reviews do you receive on average each week?
Oh, that's a good question. I can confidently say in the last year and a half, we've done, as a team, admissions counselors as well as myself, have done over 700 of them. So I'd have to do the math, and I'm not very good at that. But if you all are interested, divide 700 by roughly a year and a half, and how many weeks that is, and that'll give you approximately how many we receive. Initially, when we launched this, I think is important, and again, why I am speaking a little bit more towards the online population, because that's what I work with. We saw a significant number of online students and non-traditional students. So folks who were completed college credits. Again, that 36,000 students across the country who have some college credit but no degree. we saw a lot of those come in and say, hey, I've always wondered, how close am I? What do I need to do to finish? So that was a significant portion of the population initially. It's kind of leveled out to include all student types. So first-time freshmen sometimes with college credit from high school have requested these types of things. It's a little bit more rare, but sometimes. Online students, on-campus transfer students, non-traditional students, you name it.
Great. From your perspective, this question is from Jacqueline. From your perspective, how long does it take to train an admissions counselor on transfer credit?
That's a great question. And it depends on the person. No, it actually was much simpler than we thought it would be. So we launched this about 2 months into me being part of the enrollment team. I said a little bit earlier, I was in the retention side in Residence Life. And on my end, within about 2 hours, I was completing these reviews accurately with our registrar's assistants, and then I was doing it by myself. Same thing, our registrar and I trained and worked with our admissions team to get everybody up to speed on that process. But we utilize a lot of tools. I talked about tests a little bit, and then our internal system is very similar to tests. So once you do 1 or 2 or 3 of these, it's actually pretty simple. Many of our students, of course, similar to your institutions, come from a lot of the same places, right? Community college is geographically closest to us. So those schools, you see the same classes over and over and over again. So it's almost like same thing with your registrars folks. If they're completing these official reviews, they'll recognize the same class over and over and over again. So and to answer your question more specifically, how long does it take? We did a 2-hour training one time, and we followed up a week later to see how they were feeling with another 1-hour training. And we haven't done a single training since. We've of course had new student or new admission staff and new folks come in, and we've done the exact same thing. We've done a little bit of onboarding, and then as a team, we help them kind of get up to speed on the process. So once you've done one, you've done many, and once you've done many, you know what you're doing. So yeah, not as long as I thought it would.
Great. All right, so Molly asked, do the admissions counselors specialize in degree program area reviews, or are counselors reviewing all majors and minors?
Yes, and I love this question because that's an opportunity, depending on your institution. Many institutions do break it out by, hey, you do business, you do computer science, you do psychology, right? And you're kind of the expert in that area. Right now, being a small institution, we all become kind of a jack of all trades. So all of our admissions counselors specialize in all of our degree programs. So we have a little more than 20 to 30, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, I apologize, degree programs. I know many larger institutions have way more than that. I think it's an important question to consider as you're looking at this is how your CRM assigns admissions counselors, if it's by degree program, if it's by geographic location, how can you most specialize that process to make sure the student's having a consistent experience. So for us, we're a jack of all trades. We have degree program sheets that say, here are the required classes. And then we also have the test system and everything else that says, here's how they transfer to EOU. So yeah, thank you for asking that.
All right, so Amy asked, you mentioned there's an informal evaluation and then a formal evaluation after acceptance. Have you seen much discrepancy between those evaluations?
Great question. I love these. Yes and no. And I'll hit both of those as briefly as I can. I'm gonna start with no, because mostly the majority of the time, the vast majority of the time, they're actually very accurate. And again, part of that, I have to give credit, not only our admissions team is really talented, but our registrar's office, they articulate every single class and then put that on a student-facing server like tests, for example. So we know with 100% certainty when a class comes across that we've articulated before that it counts 100% of the time if it's on that system. Where we have discrepancies is if we get some of those transcripts that we've never seen before, from a long ways away or whatever it is. And then we have to make educated guesses because you're right, on the front end before the application, before the official review, we sometimes we don't see those classes and sometimes we do have discrepancies, but very rarely. Our registrar actually, part of our process is that our registrar as well as, or our registrar's office, as well as our advisors, when this is done and the student matriculates ultimately, they go back and look and say, hey, how close are we? So they're the safety net, the checks and balances, so to speak. So they can come back to us and say, hey, we've noticed a lot of people are getting these wrong. Please solve this problem, which has not happened yet. They consistently report out every time we check in quarterly on this process that everything's looking great, and the students appreciate that, and it's really aligned with the official review when the registrar actually goes through those.
Great, thank you, Cody. Those are all the questions we have from the audience today, from the Q&A. So great questions, everyone. I'm going to follow up with a few details here. So before we close out, I want to remind everyone that we have 2 upcoming events. May 21st is the PNACAC special meeting of the association. It's from 11 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. Pacific time. We must have a quorum for voting, so it's important that you, yes, you, are in attendance, and you will be able to register online. You can do that from the website. We've sent out some emails as well. May 22nd, the day after that, is our next PNACAC Happy Hour webinar, Telling Unique Stories After COVID-19. That's presented by Carter Osborne, owner of Carter Osborne Tutoring. And finally, if all these webinars have you itching to share your own insights, we invite you to share your ideas with us. So anyone interested in presenting a webinar can contact our professional development co-chairs at profdev@pnacac.org, so profdev@pnacac.org. And with that, thank you again to Cody for sharing such great information. Thank you all for attending today, and I want to wish everyone a wonderful weekend.